Welcome back to our show. I'm Tosh, and I'm joined by my co-host Andrew. How are you doing, my friend?
What's up, Tash? It was nice seeing you in person this past weekend. Our
Yes, it
families got
was
to get
a
together.
nice family outing for brunch. So last week we talked about our busy schedules and working dads and our goals, maybe when we plan to retire, financial independence. So one way many people are doing this is moving into low cost areas. So I
Yeah,
lived, yeah,
I've read articles about people, I guess, moving to like a lot lower cost areas out of the country, maybe like Costa Rica or Thailand. But
mhm.
there's a lot of, lower cost areas in, the US too. And we both live in expensive areas. Like I'm in New York City, in Queens, and you're in Connecticut. But you lived in a lower cost area briefly there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Delaware for a while. So it was, you know, depending on what items we were talking about, things were very low cost. Delaware also has no um, state taxes, so that was one of the few states that don't. And interestingly enough, the Delaware Apple Store is the busiest Apple store in the country. You would think it's the Fifth Avenue or something in California, but it's not because there's no sales tax. So people in multiple states nearby actually pick up there just to avoid taxes.
Yeah, that makes sense because I guess it's near a lot of other states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and
Yeah, it's a
wherever
small
else.
state, so New Jersey and Pennsylvania are, fairly close to some of the big cities in Delaware. So yeah, and
So
it's
were there
also
any
a trend.
specific? Uh-huh.
It's also a trend during the pandemic that people moved away, even purchased homes, and some are having a hard time now because a lot of their jobs are transitioning back, and now they can't because they might be 4, 5, 6 hours away, and
Right.
so that also kind of happened. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
So you said some items were less expensive. Like what specifically when you were living there was not as expensive as like the New York
So
metro
everyday
area?
items like food and stuff, I don't think was more expensive. Going out to restaurants had the added benefit of not having tax, so it's half the tip, kind of right there. Compared to New York being having 8, so if you do like 16, 18% tip going out, that was nice. And cost of living in the sense of the value of the home. So Delaware also taxes not on market value of your house, but there's a assessment value, which is around 30, 40% of market value. So to give you an example, my $450,000 home in Delaware was assessed for 110,000. So I paid taxes on $110,000. So whatever that is, that's actually less than almost 25%. So uh, it was, completely different in that sense.
Right. I think housing is definitely the biggest cost that you can lower if you move somewhere else. I mean, I feel like most items, I guess people order on Amazon, so it's not like, you're not gonna save that much on everyday items. Food, I guess,
Yeah.
like you said, restaurants, entertainment and stuff. So do you think you
Right.
were able to save? Go on.
Yeah. Was I able to save? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
a lot more than compared to like now that.
my mortgage in New York is insane. Like the taxes in my house was my mortgage in uh in Delaware almost. So it's kind of like what? Um, so yeah, if you can work remotely or your job pays somewhat close to what you earn in high, it makes no sense to live in um in a place. you know, taking out of the equation anything else that might be drawing you to a particular area. Like, if you're into some specific hobby and you need to be in a certain area for that might be uh, excluding that type of thing.
Right. I could definitely see that. My cousin who lived in Long Island, also pretty expensive, high property taxes. He moved down to North Carolina, and then now he's in Florida, like Jacksonville area, and I think he likes down there. And then I don't know how much his house is, but like the general area that he is, I was just curious. I was looking at that area. The houses are like really nice and like a fraction of the cost of a house that you would have to spend when you live up here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of
um
people who live in New York City who I've mentioned this to because I'm like, it's so much cheaper to live somewhere else. But they're like, I can't live somewhere else because New York City or the big
yeah.
cities, they're a lot more exciting. The city never sleeps. Do you
i
think that there
have
was?
I have no reason to go into the city other than work, and it's really the company that matters to me most. Case in point, when we were out this weekend, our families, we chose a place that was convenient to hang out. Perhaps not the best place to get the type of food that we were getting, or have more options. We could have gone somewhere else that would have been further, but we opted to have an easier commute and uh, not deal with traffic and congestion, right? Like that was one of the reasons. I
Were
don't
there
think
anything like?
I missed you guys, people that were friends that I couldn't hang out with on a monthly basis. It became a annual thing. So I think that's the bit. Unless you're social and you kind of, or single, where you're going out and meeting people. But we already had our family, and most of the time was there, so there was no time to really meet people and do other things. And my kid wasn't in school; he was in preschool also, so it's not like we got to meet folks that we would become friends with. There was one or two, but preschool kids tend to come not just from that area, but maybe like 20-30 minutes away. So it wasn't really, the connections weren't really there.
Right. So you ultimately moved back to uh, up here in New York, Connecticut area, metro area. What was the main reason for you coming back?
Really, it was work related. I was still working for the same company, working remotely, but coming in once a week, which was about a 6 hour trek back and forth, um, but working remotely otherwise. So basically, compacting my everyday commute to just one day, which was fine, but compounding it with everything else, it's not like I was just fully remotely working. My wife also didn't like the job that she was doing there, and our families and friends were over here. So everything kind of pointed back. Other than the monetary reason, I wish I could pay what I paid over here, what I paid over there, but that was a life or a mental health decision, I guess we made, where we still own the property over there. It's rented, so it became an investment property, which is what
Right.
we talked about previously in our episode, where buying in a place that's more affordable if you can rent it out and make the finances work for you anyways. So became an accidental landlord. But uh, yeah, the cost of living definitely is more here than it was in Delaware, but did it for other than financial reasons.
Right. But is there anything that you miss living in the lower cost area other than being low cost? Maybe there's less traffic or the slower pace of life or something
So
like
I
that.
really wasn't in a small town in Delaware, and I would think that my town there was just the same. There were more parks around. There were uh, more open lands, but it's not something that I don't really have here. But again, I'm not in New York City anymore, so it's not comparing, I guess, a city life to
Mm,
suburban life. I'm still kind of suburban,
right.
but almost everything was 20 minutes away in Delaware. And here, some things are closer, some things are further. But I just feel like um, there was options for almost anything just about 20 minutes away. So
I would imagine that traffic is not as bad because I commute to work and I'm always stuck in traffic. But I remember one time I was in Buffalo where I have my rental property, and the radio was like, "Oh yeah, there's rush hour traffic," and I was near like the downtown area. I'm like, "Yeah, this is not traffic like New York City traffic." And the other thing is a slower pace in life. I'm not sure I could get used to that because my cousin from the New York area, he said he went down to North Carolina, and when he goes to order food in the restaurants, they kind of take their time and they're slow. Whereas here, it's like you order it, 10, 15 minutes later, it's ready, you pick it up. So I guess it takes some getting used to for that too.
So regarding traffic, so traffic is interesting. It might be town and city dependent. Uh, Towns know what kind of traffic they anticipate, and they build their roads based on that. So morning rush hour was just as trafficy. Going home was just as trafficy in certain bottleneck areas. So for my wife to get home took 20 minutes. Yeah, it takes 45 minutes to an hour now, but we also live further away. If we lived in the same distance, it
Right.
might have taken the same amount of time. Um, and There are less roads also because there's less people. Um, Restaurants are, I really didn't notice slower service in restaurants. But North Carolina is probably a bigger town than depending on where it is. I don't know if it's Charlotte or something, but
Yeah, Raleigh.
um,
So in
yeah,
that
Raleigh's
general
a
area.
Raleigh. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It
Raleigh's
is
bigger.
yeah. So I think that's dependent. But granted, uh, uh, most suburban areas are going to be less crowded than suburban areas in big cities, and so yeah, that's definitely um, a concern.
Yeah, I mean, where you're living, Delaware, it's pretty big city. It's close to Philadelphia, which is another big city. Um, I have a coworker who's retiring. He's moving up to Rochester, upstate New York. So that's definitely a lot cheaper. It's pretty close to Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my houses in Buffalo, actually, not that I would actually move to Buffalo, but it has crossed my mind because when I see house prices there, I'm like, it's so much more affordable. One of the houses, it's in the great school district, and it's actually ranked in U.S. News and World Report as one of the top suburbs to live in. And the house is like a three-bedroom converted to four, like 1,400 square feet, and I bought it for like $210,000. I think the property taxes are like a little over $3,000,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, this is this is not bad. I mean, other than the harsh winters, though. So I have to say, I'm not sure I can deal with the that because
Yeah,
even when it's really cold in in New York, it gets pretty cold. But I have my North Face on and put on a scarf or hat, and I'm okay. But I think I went up there in February to Buffalo one time, and yeah, even then I was like, yeah, this is too cold to be outside. But even Buffalo, it's definitely a lower cost area. I think it still has a lot of things to do. I mean, if it's near a big university there, SUNY Buffalo, there's concerts, there's activities, and there's museums and stuff like that. So it was
yeah,
something that I considered doing.
yeah. I mean, right. I mean, it is low cost is dependent on who you are, right? Like someone coming from San Fran and New York, almost any city would be lower
Right.
cost, I guess, in that sense.
Definitely.
But I'm sure a lot of people would consider Buffalo high cost, and they might look for. So there's always a trickle down, trickle up, depending on your situation. But
I think
yeah,
the main
I
reason for
mean,
me,
yeah,
I think the main reason, I guess, I wouldn't be able to move. I guess mainly, both my parents are here. They're pretty close by, like 15, 20 minutes away. Same with my wife, her family, and then of course friends. So that would definitely be a difficult, choice to make. Plus, for my job, I guess I work for New York State, so to move to a different state, I'd have to definitely find an entire different job. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of calculus there, right? Like, uh, I read an article. Some people moving from California to Florida or North Carolina, uh, Georgia, maybe even. Um, Strictly looking at the cost aspect, then experiencing things around all the things that we mentioned here, maybe the weather, the availability of different cuisines, even people, uh, like-minded or not, or whatever the difference in philosophies or whatnot. So there was a recent article of people deciding to move back because they realized that the pay cut was also equivalent to the savings that they were having. So it wasn't like they were saving anymore. And at that point, it didn't make sense. So there's a lot of calculus I think people should look at if they're considering it. And don't just make this change. Maybe not just go visit a place for a weekend, but visible multiple places, multiple uh, 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 towns around the state or the city that you're going to, and stay there and kind of experience the local feeling before you make a big change like that. Because last thing you want to do is move and then be unhappy, right?
right, yeah. When I played around with the idea of moving, I did look at like North Carolina or Buffalo. Like, do they have good Chinese food or they have dim sum
Mm-hmm.
there, or like
Mm-hmm.
because stuff comforts of home in New York City, you have plenty different types of cuisines and stuff. So,
I don't. Yeah, that's one of the types of food I think is almost ubiquitous anywhere. I don't know about good.
well, I'm not
That's
talking about like
relative.
takeout. I'm talking
Yeah.
about
Okay.
authentic
All right.
Chinese
That's
food.
different. Even that. I just feel like if that's all you want, then perhaps
Right,
it won't be. But if you're looking for something else, then that usually is a little harder to kind of whatever. Pizza and Chinese food, you're probably gonna find almost anywhere you go. But
right,
yes, food is important. So you got to kind of. My thing is maybe make a list of things that are important to you, and then figure out towns and states that work for you on what's important for you. Don't just look at the cost aspect,
right.
but look at it holistically. Because again, you should really know what your pay scale would change by, because unless you have the option of working for your company here and working remotely anyway, and they don't care where you work from. So that's different. You're still getting the same scale, but
Right.
usually more often than not, if you're physically working or whatever, there'll definitely be a salary adjustment. You want to kind of factor that into your decision making.
Would you consider moving back to a lower cost area? Maybe if I guess job is not a factor anymore, maybe you've retired early, you're financially independent, or for whatever reason.
I think at some point when my our parents are maybe living with us or more dependent on us, if we can move everyone to a low cost area, that might be an option. But I think we would run into the same things why we move back, which is family. and friends not being around. But other than that, you never say never. I think weather, as I'm getting older, is more important than it used to be. Um, kind of like the
So you're
sun.
not going to Buffalo.
Yeah,
So
no,
no
no
Buffalo for you.
buffalo, no buffalo. Unless there's significant something else, um, financial or business opportunity for some reason that makes it really worthwhile. Right. If
Yes.
you start a business somehow and it's making millions of dollars, then everything kind of factors in, right? Now it's like, okay, I'm an independent person. I make X amount of money and I can travel. So I don't have to really live there. I just have to reside there,
Right.
have or set up residency there, and I can live wherever I want.
Yeah, I think definitely family is a factor. I'm not sure if my parents would be willing to move to a lot of these other areas because they're pretty big on their Chinese food,
They're
Chinese
all
supermarket.
right. Yeah.
But like you said, like I was saying with a family, actually my 9-year-old, he said to me recently, he's like, "Oh, when I grow up, should I live close to you and mama?" And I was like, obviously I don't know what you're gonna do when you grow up. Maybe you have a job somewhere else, but obviously I'd love to be near you. So I guess that's up in the air. I guess depending on where family is, friends, I would definitely consider living in a different area. But I mean, growing up in New York, born and raised there, it's definitely hard to leave.
Yeah, definitely. Like I need some noise, I guess you could say. Full country. Suburbs are okay. I think where I live is suburban and it's good enough, enough people around. But I wouldn't want to be anywhere where there isn't anyone for a mile,
Right.
or anything like that. That would be a completely different type of um, living situation. But some people crave that, right? So,
Yep.
do you want to close us out, Andrew?
Okay. I think that's all we have for today, right? So yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please subscribe and let other people know about it, and feel free to leave in the comments if you have any topics you want us to talk about.
Thank you, Andrew. Until next week.